Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will scoot on over here so I'm not in the window. There we go. Now we've got a window there to see a bit better. You are joining once again James Cousineau here at the studios of ProPix TV in Vancouver, British Columbia. Tonight we have the floor open to any topics that you want to discuss. By all means, if you have any ideas about conversation ideas, throw them up in the comments section. Anything you want to talk about, by all means. This is a platform for everyone to get involved in the conversation. And to guide us, we're going to start with talking about Pope Francis. And thankfully, he has been taken off of the mechanical respirators and is making improvements in his recovery. It is definitely a point where he's not out of the woods, but he is definitely showing improvement, which is great news to people around the world. At this time, of course, we need leadership to lead not just the Christians, the Catholics, and the Sikhs and the Muslims and everybody individually, but we need strong leaders to guide the world as a whole, to bring people together, to reduce the hatred and the anger and the confusion and the frustration that people are feeling. And I think that although the Pope has been at odds with Donald Trump for many years, I think that everybody, no matter what side of the argument you're on, are sending their best thoughts and prayers to the Pope. And it brings us to different topics and points of view. Now, of course, the Pope has implored the U.S. to really take a different stand and different position and different actions when it comes to immigration, when it comes to the borders, as well as going back to Donald Trump's first term. Pope Francis at that time had called Donald Trump when he was running before he was elected the first time during the campaign, talking about building the wall. And Pope Francis told him that real leaders need to start working to build bridges, not walls. And I think that was figurative and metaphoric. I think that the words that were spoken were very wise. Excuse me, instead of taking it to heart and making it a talking point to really move the conversation forward about how humanity needs to treat others, no matter what belief system you have in your home or in your life, it's important to keep in mind that no matter what, it's about treating others with respect and dignity and giving people the opportunity to improve their lives and to improve the world. And when you start bringing in walls that divide, it just doesn't end well. It doesn't go well to that principle of improving the world for the better. At that time, of course, Donald Trump had responded to Pope Francis and calling him out for his comments, berating the Pope for making a judgment on anyone's religious status and their faith. And that has continued through to shortly before the Pope was ill. And of course, at that point, he had again called on Donald Trump to show humanity, to show compassion when it came to the border issues, when it came to a lot of different issues that were on the chopping board for Trump, when it came to treating people as equals, when it came to respecting the rights of all genders and all beliefs. But as we know, those fall on deaf ears when bringing them to Trump. So let's take a look at a few of the articles that have appeared over time when it comes to Donald Trump and when it comes to the Pope and their ongoing disputes here. So as you can see here, this is a photo of Donald J. Trump and the Pope Francis. This was from the Associated Press. From May the 24th, 2017, when Donald Trump had actually met with Pope Francis at the Vatican. And after that meeting, there was talk about Donald Trump actually being inspired to do things better and to really work for a better world. But it seemed to be with caveats and restrictions, as anything does with Trump. Now, the Pope wrote that while governments have a right to defend themselves, they should not turn a blind eye to men, women, and families who need help. And that, of course, is the foundation of many, many religious leaders and religions in themselves and in the books. Pope Francis criticized Donald Trump and his administration at that time, and that was a letter that was sent out to the U.S. Catholic bishops about the mass deportations. And again, that was all the way back in 2017. Interestingly enough, with the Pope being ill and hospitalized at this time, there has been rumors, circulating online that Donald Trump and the administration are actually campaigning to have a U.S.-based or an American Pope installed, elected after Pope Francis finishes his term, which, again, good news is that he is on the road to recovery. So we don't hopefully have to worry about that for a long time to come. But again, we send our best thoughts to the Pope and hope he's doing well, hope he's feeling well. And he did, excuse me, sorry folks, it's 12:02 a.m. here in Vancouver. I just finished the other show, so my apologies for the yawns. But again, Pope Francis did take part in Mass this morning, so that was good, or yesterday morning, depending on when you're watching this. So, but that shows a definite benefit that he is recovering. And yeah, so that's good news. So back in 2017, it went on in the letter that Pope Francis wrote. It said, the act of deporting people who in many cases have left their own land for reasons of extreme poverty, insecurity, exploitation, persecution, or serious deterioration of the environment damages the dignity of many men and women and of entire families and places them in a state of particular vulnerability and defenselessness. And that is his words to the U.S. Catholic bishops in that letter. So he was standing up for those who were being targeted by the mass deportations of the United States and would ultimately be on the scopes of Donald Trump as he targeted different people and really wanted to open the borders as a one-way channel to flush them out of the U.S. Now, interestingly enough, although the Trump administration has wasted millions of dollars on unnecessary military flights instead of using commercial and charter flights, the problem is that the perception and the reality since Trump took office are actually quite in contrast. The U.S. has actually deported less people since Donald Trump took office than the same period prior in prior years. So it shows that although it is very public and giving the appearance of these mass deportations, he is not actually getting to the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, in terms of the action. Instead, there are a lot more people being held in detention in the U.S. for immigration than there were prior. So a lot more money is being spent on detaining these illegal immigrants or just people who are, maybe their green cards have expired or, their permanent residency isn't up to date, whatever the case may be. But instead of the previous actions where they would actually be given court dates and promises to appear as long as they weren't violent offenders, they would be released back into the community. In doing so, they work, they contribute, and they provide for their families. They also contribute to the gross GDP of the United States of America, as well as to programs such as Medicare and different other, retirement programs and such. And this is important because it brings up billions and tens of billions of dollars into the U.S. economy each year, and yet these individuals cannot take out of those programs. So they are contributing tens of billions of dollars a year into a program or many programs that they will never see a benefit from. And that is definitely one of the benefits to having these individuals in the country. Now, other benefits, of course, include the fact that people don't want to do the jobs that most immigrants are willing to do to build a better life. They see it as a stepping stone to moving forward in the U.S., a stepping stone to achieve their dreams, to have their children well educated, and to give them a chance at a future of prosperity, education, and intellectual growth, and of course, just overall level of living or quality of life that is far beyond what they experienced in their younger years. And so again, there are a lot of ways in which the in which migrants actually benefit the U.S. and the general public. They do not, as a whole, they do not take all this money away from hardworking Americans or from social programs, and that is one of the misconceptions and the lies that gets spread online and even offline. It's just one of those misconceptions that's been around for years, and that is where we need to look at the true reality of the world as it is, and not the distorted or fake reality that some world leaders would have us believe. And that is where we need to really have that strong leadership. And again, I come back to Pope Francis, because he really does bring a positive outlook. He brings a positive influence, not only to the practicing Catholics in the world, but also to all people, I believe, that he can inspire and does inspire. So again, we need to look at that. When you look at that, back in 2017, there was, there were comments made by U.S. representatives or the border czar, Tom Homan, who criticized the Pope's comments in an interview on Fox News. And he said that this is a lifelong Catholic. I've got harsh words for the Pope. He ought to focus on his work and leave enforcement to us. He's got a wall around the Vatican, does he not? And again, that was something that was stated by Tom Homan back in 2017. But it doesn't seem that the Trump administration has changed that belief at all, or that stand on that. And when the Pope also included in his letter to the U.S. Catholic bishops, he included the warning for administration officials, saying that what is built on the basis of force and not on truth about equal dignity of every human being begins badly and will end badly. And that was, again, words of Pope Francis. And I think that's a very important point to look at. And it has to, move in a more positive direction. We have to see more open honesty and, transparency going on throughout government and throughout the world. Before Trump's first administration, Francis famously said anyone who builds a wall to keep migrants out was not Christian. And of course, that stirred controversy and comments from Donald Trump in 2017. Again, going back to this one. Several of the executive orders signed by President Trump this week are specifically intended to eviscerate humanitarian protections enshrined in federal law and undermine due process, subjecting vulnerable families and children to grave danger. And that was a letter that came out from the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, and that was sent to the White House. So again, it is all about, upholding faith and belief that people are created equal and should be afforded the same rights and protections as anyone else in the world. We can look at countries as individual little pockets, but at the same time, all of those pockets are all interwoven together and they need to join, not separate even further. And that is an important fact that I think is overlooked at this time. People are really feeding into the misinformation, the lies, and the other mistruths that are being propagated, and just really pushed on the American public, but also in the UK, in Canada, and other nations. They're being fed a lot of the same propaganda that really targets and puts issues on to illegal immigration. That is not true. Yes, there are a very, very, very small number of immigrants who are involved in criminality. There is, again, such a very small number that are involved in murders and gang activity and rapes and drug dealing. But again, it is a small group that needs to be targeted, not the entire communities and diasporas of people from different nations. I think that there is a better way and a more efficient way to deal with this problem, and not to hide behind false fear and false information. So again, it is very important to keep that in mind as well. And yeah, it is sad to see that that is where people are going with it, to feed into this misinformation, the lies, and to try to treat people differently based on where they're from. We need to do better as a world, as a society, and you know, whether or not that is by following the words of Pope Francis, or whether it is guiding principles of Zelensky. It is the world in which we are in that we need to find more peace and more tolerance and more understanding and patience for each and every other person around us, as opposed to building walls, you know, spreading false narratives and hatred and spewing distrust towards our fellow humans. And that's just not fair. When you look at issues that are facing the world, you have Israel and Palestine, you have Ukraine and Russia, you have China and Taiwan. I mean, there's just so much upheaval and hatred and war going on. There's bloodshed, there's loss of life. And that is not what this world should be about. We should be finding ways to unite, not separate. And I believe that right now we are at a pivotal point in history in which the U.S., who has acted as a leader, as a model of all of these great things that can be achieved in the world, has taken a back seat to an authoritarianism attitude, and you know, almost heading towards a dictatorship under Donald Trump and the current administration as it is in Washington these days. You also have you have a businessman and the world's richest man who is influencing the policy and the direction of the United States government, the direction of policies for those in need, and really trying to dismantle the U.S. government and democracy as it is, without understanding the complexities nor the abilities of those who are there to hold it together. And even when he does understand the abilities of those who are there to hold democracy together and to bring it forward into the next generation, it doesn't seem to be a top priority for Musk, for Trump, for Vance. And I think that this last week, when they ambushed Vladimir Zelensky in the White House, in the Oval Office, in front of media, that was very clear to see. When the U.S. abandons their principles and their decades-old strategies of world peace and maintaining that, and protecting American citizens and trying to develop the nation that people look up to, that people want to achieve greatness in that country, then I think that it is completely lost at this point. And as I said, at a crossroads where it may be on a road where there is no U-turn, there is no cul-de-sac, there is no roundabout, so that'll prevent anybody from turning around and coming back from the end of that road. I just think that it's a dangerous place to be. I think that when the United States administration is parroting the talking points of the Kremlin and standing up for a dictator, a brutal, ruthless dictator who has no compunctions against killing off his opponents or anybody who is speaking out against him and his government. I think that that is a dangerous world to live in. When you have a U.S. president who is admiring the dictators of the world, when he's admiring the leadership in North Korea, in China, in Iran, in Russia. I think that should be a huge wake-up call to all Americans, but instead it seems that more and more Americans are willing to drink the Kool-Aid, to go down that path with Trump, with Vance, and with Musk, and that is a dangerous place to be in the world, where you want to have a democratic process, where you want to bring in some type of leadership and calmness to the geopolitical strife that's spreading and just continuing around the globe. When I've spent time in Ukraine, I've seen the bloodshed, I've seen the tears, I've seen the suffering, I've seen the death, I've seen the the rockets and the explosions and burnt bodies that are blown apart and pieces all over the streets. These are not images that anyone wants to see. And when J.D. Vance comes out in the White House, when he's invited to actually go to Ukraine by Vladimir Zelensky, and he says, hey, come and look at what's going on. Come and see for yourself the atrocities and the death and the destruction of our nation. Instead, J.D. Vance replies that he's seen the stories. Now, do you know what? There's nothing online that can really give justice, and I say that in not a positive way in any way, shape, or form, but it cannot convey the comprehension of the devastating impacts that this war is having in Ukraine. It doesn't give the true impression of the soldiers who are lost, the heartbreak of the parents, of their children, of the wives or husbands and others, when they know that their loved one is not coming home again, when they know that their loved ones have been seriously and suffered life-altering injuries that will never be recovered from, when they see historic sites and cultural significant sites gone. There's no recovering those. They are lost forever in piles of rubble. This is where we are as a world. This is where the world is in Ukraine. And to try to play this off and mitigate any responsibility away from Vladimir Putin and his government is a disgrace to world peace and to all of the lives that have been lost, not only in Ukraine, but throughout history, whether it was in World War I, World War II, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, I can just go on and on and on. But the point being is that to discredit the truth by claiming that Ukraine was responsible for starting this war and that the UN was involved in starting this war and that NATO was responsible for starting this war is just deflecting the responsibility from where it lies. And that is on the shoulders of Vladimir Putin and his administration that allowed this war to take place, the illegal occupation and annexation of areas of Ukraine, the illegal and criminally wrong deaths of so many, that to try to in any way take that responsibility off the shoulders of where it belongs, and that is strictly on the Russian leadership or lack of leadership, then that is a travesty. We need to hold them accountable. We need to stand by Ukraine. We need to stand by Europe. And we need to stand by our principles, our values, our ethics, our history, in honoring all of those around the world who have lost their lives to bring peace to the world, to support peace, to negotiate peace. No matter where it goes, it always is with the goal of peace. And so many have lost their lives. So much blood has been shed. So much leadership has been wasted, spent on wars and defense, instead of trying to make improvements in other parts of the world that can make an everlasting change, whether that is through technology, whether that is through agriculture, or anything else. Think of the accomplishments that could have been made if these trillions of dollars that have been spent on wars over generations had gone into other areas besides creating profits for the defense contractors and for politicians and others who have benefited wrongly from war. I'm not saying that that is going on right now. I'm not accusing anyone. I'm just saying that throughout history, it has shown that this has happened and that it continues to happen in some regions. We must take the opportunity now to take a stand and to decide what kind of a world we want for future generations. Because the path that we are on is not the right one. The path that we are on to divide and to conquer other lands, to give up on what we know is right, is not the path forward. Our children, our grandchildren, and our future generations need to know that we took a stand. And we did so peacefully, democratically, and with love and concern for the future world. So I encourage everyone, send a letter to your MLAs, to your MPs, to your Prime Minister, to your presidents, your senators, your congresspeople, and say enough is enough. Let's deal with facts. Let's deal with truth. Let's not allow the disinformation and the lies to be spewed, especially from people in positions of power and leadership, because they are doing no benefit to humanity. So with that, I will call it a show. We'll say thank you for joining us once again here on Live Chat with James. It was a very quiet evening here on the chat channels, so I hope that you are all doing well. And once again, you're watching Live Chat with James from the studios of ProPix Canada TV in Vancouver, British Columbia. If you have any topic ideas or if you want to leave comments, please do so in the comment section. Even when the show is reposted for rebroadcast, we follow those comments and we like to read them. And we encourage you to leave your ideas for further topics, whether it is on current events, investigative journalism pieces, or otherwise. Make sure to make your voice heard. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Thanks for joining us once again.